Hi, my name is Bernice, and this is a review of HTML. So we'll begin just a brief introduction that I will be showing a question, and then on the next slide will be an answer. So you can always pause the video if you want to on the question, and then after you give your answer, you can then start the recording, the video again. So power of HTML. What is HTML? HTML is hypertext markup language. It's a markup language for creating web pages and applications. HTML syntax includes elements and attributes, and the web browsers parse those in order to render the content of the web page. With HTML, the structure and content of a web page is defined. And HTML documents are made up of the two things, the content and the tags that format it for the proper display. So the element, it contains the tags and the content. So that is the element contains it has the start tag, the content, and then the end tag if there is one. What is an element? And elements, their elements are components that provide structure for the content. They're defined within HTML files using tags, and a tag is inside angle brackets, and then HTML elements may be nested within other elements, and most elements have an opening tag and a closing tag, but there are some that are self-closing. For example, the image tag. And what is a tag? Tags are used to define elements. They are enclosed in angle brackets. Most elements have an opening tag and a closing tag, and then some are self-closing, as we said, the image tag, which is the element, the image tag is the image element. What is a void element? Void elements only have the start tag. They do not contain any child nodes. There's no nested elements or text nodes. Examples are the image, the horizontal rule, the break, the embed, and meta. And an HTML node is they are individual elements that make up an HTML document represented in a hierarchical structure known as the Document Object Model, DOM. Each node can be an element, text, or comment, and they can have parent-child relationships with one another. What is an HTML attribute? An HTML attribute, elements they can have attributes defined within the tag. So attributes are the key value pairs that give metadata about the tag that are important for the browser to know. For example, image elements must have a URL which the browser can call to retrieve the image file to display on the page. Use the source attributes, for example, the image source src equals, and then in the double quotes we have the URL to the location of where the picture is, and then the alt is the alternate text to display if they can't display the the browser if it cannot display the image. What is a global attribute? A global attribute, they are applied to any element on the page. So some important global attributes are class, ID, hidden language, style, tab index, and title. How do you create HTML documents? Every HTML document ending with a .html extension, you would create the file and then with the ending in .html. The normally index.html is the home page, and then you can also have other pages, but they all have the .html extension, and they begin with a tag, a special tag, which is doc type, and it's a tag. It's not an element. It's only lets the browser know that it is what type of document it is. So that for HTML5, the way you would declare the doc type is the angle bracket and exclamation mark, and then all caps doc type and space, and then lowercase HTML, and then the closing angle bracket. And it does not have a closing tag. It's not self-closing. What is the root element of a HTML document? The root element of an HTML document, it's the HTML tag or element. So the HTML elements would begin with the HTML opening tag, and then there'll be another closing tag at the end, and everything else on the website, on the web page, on the page will be nested inside the HTML element. What are two important elements nested inside the HTML tag? Within the HTML element, we have two important tags or elements, the head and the body. So those are both, they're not just tags, these are elements where you would have the head opening tag, and then you'll also have content in there, and then the closing head tag, and then you'll have an opening body tag, and then content, and then the closing body tag. So the head element will contain all the metadata for the page, like the title, character encoding, references to external style sheets, and the body element contains the actual content of our page, and that'll be rendered on the screen by the browser. What is the meta element? The meta element, it is the meta tag. It defines the character encoding and that the file will be using. There also are other meta tags. You can use the meta tag elements. These are not just tags, they're elements. They begin with the meta tag, and they will have other contents inside that tag. What is a HTML comment? The comment is it's visible. It is not visible on the web page. The comments, it is visible in the HTML document, and you can also see it if you look at the if you use your developer tools and you look at the page source, you can see it that way too. So it begins with the angle bracket, exclamation mark, dash, dash, and then you put your whatever you want to say, and then you have dash, dash, and the closing angle brace bracket. And so that's how you would have a comment. What are inline and block level elements? Block level elements are those that will render on new lines in blocks by default. So, instead of the inline elements, they just render inline, so it won't take up the full line. So, an example of a block element is div. An example of an inline element is span. Name some common elements. So common elements are div, which stands division of the page, P, which defines a paragraph, span is an inline tag for grouping text or elements, B, bold text, I, to italicize text, and then the headings H1 through H6, with H1 is the largest, H6 is the smallest, and H1 you can only have one of those on the page. BR is line break. Table defines a table. Image is for an image, and you include the source code for the location of the image inside that. OL is ordered list. UL is unordered list. A with an href and then a link. You would provide the link for the hyperlink so you can navigate to other pages or other locations on the page or on the site. List item is LI. That's another one for the ordered list. Unordered list. What is a HTML form? A HTML form is a section of a document that contains controls such as text fields, password fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, so the submit button, menus. You use these elements on a page so that it can collect information from a user, which is typically submitted to a web server. To create a form, you would use the form tag. Why use an HTML form? You use it to collect information or data from the user, and then that can be sent to the server or to email. So if they want to purchase items or if they want to just fill out the contact form, these are different ways that you would collect the information using the form. Input element in HTML forms. So an HTML form collects information from elements. So you will specify an additional type of attribute to indicate which field to display. And there are different fields can be created, such as text fields, checkbox, password field, or radio button. The text field is a one-line input field that allows the user to input a line of text. The type attribute is text. And then we have an example of the text field there where we have the label And then we have the input with the type of text, and then we give it a name so that we know what this is. The password field, what is a password field? Password fields are a type of text field in which the text entered is masked using asterisks or dots. So that way it's kept secret, so it's not viewable. This prevents others from viewing the screen to see what is typed, and it's created by specifying the attribute value as password and then the type. So in this example, we have the input type equals password. It's not encrypted, so it's masked, but it's not encrypted. So that is still other things you will have to do to encrypt the data so that when it's sent to the server, to keep it secret. Radio buttons. What are radio buttons? Radio buttons are used to let the user select exactly one value from a list of predefined options. So it is created by specifying the type as radio, and then so you can have multiple sets of radio buttons to make sure that the only one option is selected from a given set. Each radio element must have matching name attributes. So in this example, we have an input type of radio. The name is gender, and then we have the label is male, and then we have the input type of radio, and then the name is gender again. The first one, the ID was male, and the second one, the ID is female. So the label for female. So there you have the type radio, name gender, ID male, and type radio, name gender, ID female. What are checkboxes? Checkboxes are used to let the user select one or more values from a predefined set of options. And the type value for checkboxes is checkbox. So an example of this is you have the input type checkbox and the name subject and the ID math, and then you have another input type checkbox. The name is subject again, and the ID this time is science. So they can select you can select more than one. And you also have the matching name as subject so that they are all groups. What are file select boxes? File select boxes allow the user to select a local file on their computer and send it as an attachment to the web server. It is similar to a text box with a button that allows the user to browse for a file. So instead of browsing for the file, the path and name of the file can also be written. And they are created by specifying the type of as file. So then we have the input type equals file. What is a text area? A text area it allows for multiple lines of text. So if you're allowing the user to input more to maybe describe something or write more information, you give them a larger area than just with the text, which is one line. You do not use the input element. You can control it by using rows and columns to specify the number of rows and columns it supports. And most of the text areas are resizable. and the defaults are managed by those attributes. What are select boxes? These are the drop downs. Select boxes are used to allow users to select one or more options from a drop down list. The select boxes are created by using two elements, select and option, and the select element defines a drop down, while the list items are defined within the select element using option elements. HTML selects multiple attribute. The multiple attribute is a Boolean attribute. When present, it specifies that the multiple options can be selected at once. Selecting multiple options vary in different operating systems and browsers. For Windows, you hold down the control button and select multiple options, or for the Mac, you hold down the command button and select the multiple options. Because there's different ways of doing this, you have to inform the user that the multiple selection is available. Reset and submit buttons. What are reset and submit buttons? Reset and submit buttons. The submit button allows the user to send the form data to the web server. You can define a submit button by specifying the type attribute as submit. The reset button is used to reset the form and will display any default values. You can define a reset button by specifying the type attribute as reset. Attributes used in HTML forms. So some attributes that are used in HTML forms are the action, target, name, method, value, placeholder, and required. What is the action attribute? The action attribute, it indicates where the form data will be processed. This is usually the URL of a server, and usually the form data is sent to a web page on the web server after the user clicks the submit button. I don't have the example on here right now. The target attribute, what is the target attribute? The target attribute is used to specify whether the submitted result will open in the current window, a new tab, or on a new frame, another window. The default value is self, which results in the form submission in the same window. To make the results display in a new browser tab, it should be set to blank. And I also don't have that code on here right now. Most often this attribute is not present and the default value of self is used. What is the name attribute? The name attribute should be provided for each element. It is not required, but the value provides a label for the data once the form is submitted. If the name attribute is not specified in an attribute field, then the data of that field will not be sent. See, I don't have the example here. The data sent will include the username and the password fields. The method attribute. The method attribute is used to specify the HTTP method used to send data while submitting the form. There are two options, get and post. Get, after the form is submitted, the values are visible in the address bar of the browser. And the post, when you submit the form, the values are not visible in the address bar of the browser. So those are important to know. What is the value attribute? The value attribute specifies an initial value of an input field. It also serves as the attribute to use when providing a button label for submit and reset input elements. What is the placeholder attribute? The placeholder attribute specifies a hint that describes the expected value of the input field. It's a sample value or short description, so it lets the user know what to type in there. A short hint is displayed in the input field before the user enters their value. It works for text, search, URL, telephone, email, and password. What is the required attribute? The required attribute indicates an input field that must be filled out before submitting the form. In most browsers, it will prevent the user from submitting the form until an accepted value is entered. The required attribute works with the following types: text, search, URL, email, password, date pickers, number, checkbox, radio, and file. And the required attribute doesn't have a value portion. You only need to specify the word required. What are the min and max attributes? The min and max attributes specify the minimum and maximum values for an input field. The min and max work well with the following input types: a number, range, date, time, local, month, time, and week. Tip is to use the max and min attributes together to create a range of legal values. What is HTML5? HTML5 it's the most recent release of HTML, and it has introduced several new features that are important to use, including the doc type declaration, the character set the meta with the character set of you can use UTF 8-8. It's a normal one, so that you'll see most web pages. The doc type we talked about earlier is for the lets the browser know what type of document it is. It's the document type declaration (DTD) and instructs the browser about the document type. The character encoding is an approach of converting bytes into characters. For validating HTML document, a program must use a character encoding. And HTML5 also introduced features to allow us to embed audio and video files on the web page and provide the support to run JavaScript in the background. So HTML5 introduced the semantic elements. I'll give you a second here. What are HTML semantic elements? So they are elements that the name matches what the section on the page. So, but previously we used div, and then now we can give it different has semantic meaning, so it's more descriptive. The name of the element describes the sections that it is. Section is one of those. So you'll have HTML elements that could include form, table, article, and section is HTML. What is a section? It's a HTML5 tag that defines uh, a section, a grouping of content. You could have chapters, headers, footers, introduction content, however you need to define it. What is an article? An article element represents a section of content that forms an independent part of a document or site, such as forum post, blog post, newspaper article, etc. What is a header? The header element specifies the header for a document or section. So you will have nested, you have the head and the body, and then inside the body you can have a header to this for the header of the page. So it's different from the head section. The head section, the head element, there's also a header. What is a footer? The footer element is used to define the footer of a document or section. It contains information about the author of the document, the copyright information, links to terms, contact information, and other information you'll see in the footer. What is navigation? So the nav element is the HTML5 semantic elements for navigation. And you, that's how you would define the links to other locations on the sites, other pages. What is an aside? The aside element is used to identify content that is related to the primary content of the web page. The inside the aside element does not is not the primary content of the page. What is HTML figure and fig caption elements? The figure and fig caption elements are used for you can include an image, and then the fig caption is displays text underneath the image. What is the HTML audio tag? The audio element is used to embed audio in a web page, and it defines sound content, and it has controls attributes that can add audio to play, pause, volume. The source element defines the media resources for the audio files, and it has attributes and type. The source is used to specify the file format of the audio content, and the type specifies the audio, the audio supports. What is the HTML video tag? The video element is used to embed a video on a web page, such as a movie clip or other video stream. What is HTML form validation? Form validation is used when you submit a form. This is done on the client side before you send it to the server to try to check to make sure that the content is in the correct format. There's also server side validation that you can do with JavaScript, but form validation, this is just on the client. And so it can, if they try to, if the user leaves a field blank and it's required, it'll let them know, and it won't let it the form submit until something is entered there. You can do a valid phone number, or email address, or password for the correct length with the correct numbers and letters and other special characters that are needed. And it'll display a message the if if the validation fails for something. Um, so this is client side. There's built-in form validation, uses HTML form validation and features, and JavaScript validation that uses JavaScript, which is customizable, but that's on the server side, so it's not done in HTML. What is built-in form validation? Some of you can have the attributes required, a min length and max length, min and max, type. If it's invalid, it won't let the form be submitted. And then, I've not done the CSS yet. That is it for the HTML review for now, and I thank you and wish you a great day.